Hello, Rick. Happy New Year. Hello, Jantha. Hello, Julie. Hello, Metika. Yes, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll get started in a minute or two. Hello, Yankee. All right. We'll get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Anuloma. Avidya pachaya sankhara sankhara pachaya vinyanang vinyana pachaya namarupang namarupa pachaya salayatanang salayatana pachaya passo passa pachaya vedana vedana pachaya tanha tanha pachaya upadanang Upadana Pachaya Bhavo Bhava Pachaya Jati Jati Pachaya Jara Maranang Soka Parideva Dukado Manasupayasa Sambhavanti Evametassa Kevalassa Dukkha Kandassa Samudayo Hoti Patiloma Avidyaya tveva asesa viraga niroda sankara niroda vinyana niroda namarupa niroda salayatana niroda passa Phassa nirodha vedana nirodho. Vedana nirodha tanha nirodho. Tanha nirodha upadana nirodho. Upadana nirodha bhava nirodho. Bhava nirodha jati nirodho. Jati nirodha jara maranang soka parideva dukado manasupaya sa nirujjanti. Evametasya kevalasya dukkha kandasya nirodho hoti iti. All right, English. The arising of the wheel of existence. Dependent on ignorance, volitional formations arise. Dependent on volitional formations, consciousness arises. Dependent on consciousness, mentality and materiality arise. Dependent on mentality and materiality, the sixfold base arises. Dependent on the sixfold base, contact arises. Dependent on contact, feeling arises. Dependent on feeling, craving arises. Dependent on craving, clinging arises. Dependent on clinging, becoming arises. Dependent on becoming, birth arises. Dependent on birth, aging and death arise, and sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus there is the arising of this whole mass of suffering. The cessation of the wheel of existence. Through the entire cessation of this ignorance, volitional formations cease. Through the cessation of volitional formations, consciousness ceases. Through the cessation of consciousness, mentality and materiality cease. Through the cessation of mentality and materiality, the sixfold base ceases. Through the cessation of the sixfold base, contact ceases. Through the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. Through the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. Through the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. Through the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. Through the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. And through the cessation of birth, aging and death cease, and sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus there is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. All right, friends, it is Monday night, and that means it's time for Dhammapalooza. This is the festival of Dhamma that the Maggasekha community has every Monday night when I am able to host it. And tonight's going to be a short one. We're probably only going to go an hour because I'm going to be traveling tomorrow morning early, and there's still a few things that I need to do with the night. So maybe we'll go an hour or so. And but for this, the time that we have tonight, we'll see how it works out. So, because Dhammapalooza is always community guided. So, for the next couple of minutes, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a talk about, you can put that in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like the community to discuss, you can put that in the chat. And if not, then we can always do some sutta roulette. Let's see. Oh, hello, Cleo. Good to see you. Hello, Julie. I don't know. I've never heard of this. I wouldn't doubt that it is probably some kind of a practice. But it's not something that I'm familiar with. Is chanting Itipiso 108 times a practice? Is it specific to New Year? No idea. There's a huge diversity of how things are done in the Theravada world. I wouldn't be surprised if this was some kind of a New Year thing. I mean, there are all-night chantings and things like that. They do exist. I've never attended one. I've never been a part of one. So I'm sure there's probably a team of monks doing. I wonder how long it would take to do Itipiso 108 times. Itipiso is not that big. I bet you it would take about 2 hours. Maybe 2 to 3 hours. It wouldn't take that long. So it's definitely not an all-night chanting thing. Depending on how much they add to the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, if they're chanting more than that. But yeah, I am honestly not the person to go to ask about like these kind of chantings. This was not something Bhante Ji did. So I have basically no experience in these kind of things. So I mean, I know what I've heard from other people, but you know, this is not something that Bhante Ji did, so it's not something that I'm familiar with. 2.5 hours. All right. Hey, I was close. Very good. 2.5. I said between 2 and 3 hours. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's an Abhayagiri thing. Even if it's a New Year thing. Maybe they meditate, they stay up at night, something like that. I saw that Clear Mountain was doing a, I guess, meditate to midnight or all night thing last night. I watched it for a couple minutes before going to bed. So Rick says, can you offer a short Dhamma talk on setting skillful determination or intentions for the coming year? Don't. That's it. Don't set the problem is that we think that the clock striking 12 on a different calendar day can be some kind of actual impetus for change. But statistically and historically, if you look at it, and if you look at just yourself, really, I'm at least myself, and you see what other people, most of the time that's not really a long-lasting thing. You know, most New Year's resolutions end within a couple weeks. So I don't make any determinations for New Year. You know, it's a new year. So what? I'm closer to death. That's what I should make a determination on, right? Every day I'm closer to death. Let me try to practice like the mountains are closing in. But in terms of setting skillful determinations in general, whether you do it in the new year or on May 14th, whatever time of the year, it's very important to understand what your goal is, and then to break down what you need to do to achieve that goal. I think about it in terms of dependent origination. We just chanted. It's perfect. We just chanted dependent origination and dependent cessation. Think about it in terms of dependent origination. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. If you're trying to make something arise, some kind of skillful habit, well, what causes the conditions do you need to work on for that skillful habit to arise and to be maintained and to stay? If you're trying to get unskillful habits to cease, well, what causes the conditions can lead that unskillful habits to cease? You have to think about it in terms of these causes and conditions. Don't get too fixated on the goal. Setting the goal is fine. It's important. You need it. But really, what you need to do is focus on the little micro actions, the little micro goals that you need to do every day so that you can build towards that. this is something that I've struggled with most of my life, because I've been a dreamer, right? I've like, oh, this is a good idea. I should do this. I should do that. I should do this. I want to do this. And then I never really like, I might start, but I never finish, or I kind of just get stuck in the dreaming phase and never actually take the steps towards making that dream a reality. Right? This is why I'm doing things quite different in building Maggasekha, right? Trying to focus on the little micro things that I need to do every day that will build up to Maggasekha growing and flourishing. And I'm not worried. I mean, I have a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan. That's fine. But I'm not focused on, the 15-year plan, like exactly, because that's still a ways away. What do I need to do today to ensure that these plans have a good chance of coming to fruition? So think of it in terms of dependent origination. Think of it in terms of arising and ceasing, causes and conditions. Figure out what causes and conditions you need to do. Right? If you have lots of various triggers, like such and such unpleasant feeling happens, you go for food, you go for drugs, you go for alcohol, whatever. Well, then that's where you look. This happens, then that happens, and this is my response. How do I change that response? How do I set the groundwork that I have a better chance of not falling into these unskillful habits? How do I do that? Right? Reflect on that. You have to really kind of make it your object of meditation. Even if sometimes, if like that's what you have to do, I'm not going to worry about sitting and follow my breath. I'm not going to worry about follow this technique, that technique. This is my practice for right now. That could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever I need to do. But this is what I need to focus all of my mindfulness on, so I can figure it out and set good causes and conditions. And that's still the practice. You're not practicing. You are dealing with maybe it's a very specific hindrance, very specific fetter, but it's still one of those things that are keeping you from being awakened. So it's not like you're wasting time. You're not wasting time. You are working. You're focusing on one thing for a little while, and that's fine. Sometimes you need to do that. That's a good thing. I think that's what I have to say about that for now. Very recently heard a talk suggesting we select what we would like to let go to reduce suffering, not determinations to attain or get. Yeah, that's good. For sure. There really isn't any, there's really not any getting or attaining. The, things arise according to their causes and conditions. You don't get jhana. You set the groundwork and jhana comes. Right? You don't get out and grab nibbana. You put the work in and you set the groundwork, and the causes and conditions lead to nibbana. So be very wary about grasping and seeking attainments, for sure. How important is sense restraint in a layperson's practice? As important as you want it to be. That's what I'm going to say. if you are trying to follow the Full Noble Eightfold Path, it's going to be part of that path. Right? This is not something that is not for lay people. It is something also for lay people, but not everybody's up to that point yet. Not everybody wants to go that far. That's okay. Everybody's on their own path and their own, setting their own race. Right? There's no first, second, third, fourth, 10th place on this path. We're all doing our own path. But if you want to do the full path, the full practice, then practicing sense restraint is part of the Buddha's gradual path. Now, you don't have to try to do it, like as a monastic, like going full of brahmacharya and really trying to, um, practice really strong sense restraint. But you can at least practice developing sense restraint for some of the gross attachments, some of the gross, and by gross I mean like gross versus subtle, not like gross as in disgusting. Some of like the gross in terms of like very large, very obvious ones. So you can, whether that's what, food or an attractive person or smell, sound, taste, whatever, you can say, okay, let me practice restraint. Let me not get wrapped up in signs and features. What does that mean? It means you understand and you acknowledge what this is. I'm having this experience. It's a pleasant experience. I have this attraction, this attachment. And then sense restraint is you end it there. You don't feed more craving into it. That's what sense restraint is. Not feeding more craving into what you are experiencing through your senses. Acknowledging what's there, letting it be, letting it go. That's sense restraint. So you can, throughout your day, find a variety of different ways in which you can do this, no matter what your situation. Rick says, yes, I spent over a year focused on practicing right speech. Lately, I've been experiencing a heart of letting go and being content with how things really are while living inspired practice. Yeah. If you're paying attention and you do it long enough, you will see, you can feel, you can understand, you can have intuition that I need to focus on this right now. Like this needs to be my focus. And you can, you can nurture that. That's what happened to me a couple of years ago. I really started feeling and getting deeper into dependent origination. Started having a bit more insights and feeling like I need to think and focus and contemplate and learn and investigate this more in my experience. And that's kind of, it's still there, but it's not as strong. It's kind of done. Um, and I don't know what the next one is. Maybe it's just so when nothing strong comes up, I just go back to the basics. Just go back to, okay, this is the full path. What am I, how am I engaging with the path in its totality in my daily life? I think I'm going to give it another minute or so in case there's a question. But I think maybe we'll read from the Kudaka. Maybe I'll bring up Sutta Central and you can kind of see what the Kudaka is, and we'll because this is an interesting. So the Kudaka Nikaya is the fifth Nikaya. In terms of early Buddhist texts, parts of it are considered part of the EBT and parts of it not. So it's a mixed bag. So let's go to Sutta Central. As usual, we'll start from the home screen, basket of discourses, and then we have the Nikayas. So down here we have the Kudaka, collection of minor discourses. And now we'll just do a scroll through to see what's in the Kudaka. The Dhammapada. So if you've read the Dhammapada, you've read the Kudaka Nikaya, the Dhammapada. The Dhammapada is essentially a collection of verses found in the suttas, found in the other Nikayas, and kind of collected into one short book. If you read through all of the suttas, you will find, I'm not going to guarantee you'll find every single line of the Dhammapada, but you'll find at least 80% of it. You'll just be reading a sutta, and then there'll be a set of verses at the end. You're like, that's from the Dhammapada. Right? That's how it goes. The Dhammapada is like somebody went through all the suttas, collected all the verses, and slopped them together. Then we have the Udana. Maybe you've heard this one. These are all fairly short suttas, too, for the most part. The Itivutika. And these are all, so far, these are all considered early Buddhist texts. Sutta Nipata. Sutta Nipata is actually the very first suttas I ever read, even before the Dhammapada and things like this. It was my first Buddhist book, too. I remember I got it, I think I got it off Amazon. Maybe I got it off Amazon, either Amazon or Barnes and Noble. But I think I remember it coming in the mail. This will be back in like 2007, somewhere around there. But I'm pretty sure Barnes and Noble didn't have the Sutta Nipata. So I'm pretty sure I had to get it online, if I remember correctly. Hello, Gregory. So this is the Sutta Nipata. And this is where this here says, this is where you find the three of the Parita chants, three famous chants, Ratana Sutta, Mangala Sutta, and Metta Sutta. These are all suttas from the Sutta Nipata, which is very archaic. I mean, it's definitely among the older strata of the teachings. And so here we start to get into some of the things that are not considered early Buddhist texts. These are later verses, later groupings that were put here. Stories of heavenly mansions, Vimana. Those of you who are who learn about the Vimanas, I think it's called Vimanas in ancient Indian. These are like the flying machines that fly through the sky in ancient India. It's quite interesting read. The Petavatu, as one Sri Lankan Buddhist monk made his own what you call it, his own translations of the Petavatu, and it's called Buddhist Ghost Stories, and it has like the goosebumps, those book stories, the goosebumps. It has like that font on it, Buddhist Ghost Stories. It's pretty funny. And then here we have, now we're back to EBT, Therigatha versus of the Bhikkhus, Therigatha versus of the Bhikkhunis. This is early Buddhist texts. Past life legends of the senior monks. Now we're getting into not early texts. Past life legends of the Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis, chronicles of the Buddha, past life stories. Now this is the Jatakas. If you ever want to know where the Jatakas are in the Kudaka Nikaya. And the Milindapana. This is a, I think, is this a Sri Lankan document? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's not. But I might be mixing it up with another M word. But this is the Kudaka Nikaya, and it has a lot of different things in here. So I think I want to read from, I think we're going to read from the Ittavutaka. Let's see what we have here. Here we go. Talking about sense restraint. Let's read this. Living in suffering. This was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. That is what I heard. Mendicants. When a mendicant has two qualities, they live unhappily in the present life, with distress, anguish, and fever. And when the body breaks up after death, they can expect a bad rebirth. What two? Not guarding the sense doors and eating too much. When a mendicant has these two qualities, they live unhappily in the present life, with distress, anguish, and fever. And when the body breaks up after death, they can expect a bad rebirth. The Buddha spoke this matter. On this he said, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and likewise mind. A mendicant who leaves these sense doors unguarded, immoderate in eating, sense faculties unrestrained, reaps suffering, both physical and mental, burning in body, burning in mind, by day and by night. Such a person lives in suffering. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. This is what I heard. Why don't we go to the next one? Hello, Karuna. You finally got a connection at Penn Station. Are you listening while riding the subways or the trains? I'm coming to Queens tomorrow morning. So I'll be in, I know you don't consider that New York City, but I'll be in the New York neck of the woods up there as of tomorrow afternoon. So let's look at living in happiness. So we already know what living in suffering is, and it's a pretty good chance that we know what living in happiness is, right? The opposite. Mendicants. When a mendicant has two qualities, they live happily in this present life without distress, anguish, and fever. And when the body breaks up after death, they can expect a good rebirth. What two? Guarding the sense doors and moderation in eating. When a mendicant has these two qualities, they live happily in the present life without distress, anguish, and fear. And when the body breaks up after death, they can expect a good rebirth. The Buddha spoke this matter. On this it is said, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and likewise mind. A mendicant who makes these sense doors well guarded, eating in moderation, restrained in sense faculties, reaps happiness, both physical and mental, but not burning in body, not burning in mind, by day and by night. Such a person lives in happiness. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. This is what I heard. I think we can keep going here. Why not? Mortifying. This seems like a good section with good Dhamma. This is what the Buddha, the perfected one, this was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. That is what I heard. These two things, mendicants, are mortifying. What two? Tapaniya is the word here. I'm just going to do a quick Pali word search. Obviously, Bhante Sujato translates as, yeah, tormenting, torturous, causing remorse. Interesting. One of the other meanings of this is to purify. Purified gold. To be purified by fire. These two things mendicants are mortifying. What two? It's when someone hasn't done good and skillful things that keep them safe, but has done bad, violent, and depraved things. Thinking, I haven't done good things, they're mortified. Thinking, I have done bad things, they're mortified. These are the two things that are mortifying. The Buddha spoke this matter. On this it is said, having done bad things by way of body, speech, and mind, and whatever else is corrupt, not having done good deeds, and having done many bad, when their body breaks up, that witless person is reborn in hell. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. That is what I heard. All right, let's try another section. Let's read this one, the holy offering of the teaching. This was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. This is what I heard. I, mendicants, am a Brahmin, committed to charity, always open-handed, bearing my final body, a healer, a surgeon. So obviously, when he's talking about being a Brahmin, he doesn't mean the Brahmin caste. Remember, he usurps the word Brahmin and to mean those who are awakened, Aryans. You are my rightful children, born of my mouth. This is again, right? In the Brahmanic tradition, the Brahmins are born out of the mouth, out of the head, out of the top of Brahma, while everybody else, you're born lower. The lowest caste is the lowest part of the body. So this is the Buddha using the, the cultural tradition here and adapting it for his own meaning and phrases. Committed to charity, always open-handed. This is the Buddha is saying. The Buddha says, I do not teach as a teacher with a closed fist, but an open hand. Meaning, there's nothing hidden. There's no esotericism in the Buddha's teachings. There's no you have to reach level 10, then I'll teach you the secret, super secret teachings. This is not how this works. At least not in the early texts. Some traditions maybe there's a little bit more of that. But in the early texts in the suttas, that's not how the Buddha teaches. Bearing my final body, a healer and a surgeon. Have you heard that where they say the Buddha is the consummate physician, and how the Four Noble Truths are a diagnostic tool? This is kind of where you see it's from the suttas. You see this thing of the Buddha being a doctor. A healer, a surgeon. You are my rightful children, born of my mouth, born of the teaching, created by the teaching, heirs in the teaching, not in things of the flesh. There are these two gifts, a gift of things of flesh and a gift of the teaching. Better of these two gifts is the gift of the teaching. There are these two kinds of sharing, sharing things of the flesh and sharing the teaching. So this is the same wording we find in Satipatthana Sutta under Vedana, Sirisa Niramisa Sirisa, right? Of the body, of the flesh, not of the body. And so this is the same Pali word here being used. So this is kind of like saying of the physical world, physical material things, as opposed to the teaching, the spiritual aspect. There are these two kinds of support in things of the flesh and support in the teaching. The better of these two kinds of support is support in the teaching. There are these two kinds of offerings, an offering of things of flesh and an offering of the teaching. The better of these two offerings is an offering of the teaching. The Buddha spoke this matter. On this it was said, you realize one, compassionate for all living creatures, unstintingly offers the teachings. Sentient beings revere him first among gods and humans who have gone beyond rebirth. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. This is what I find. Any comments, questions on anything we've been reading? Just as another reminder, this is a short Dhammapalooza because I'm traveling early in the morning and I have a few things I need to do tonight before bed. So we'll probably be ending in about 15, 20 minutes, somewhere around there. We'll read this one, easy to find. This was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. That is what I heard. Mendicants, these four trifles are easy to find and are blameless. What for? Rag robes, a lump of alms food, lodgings at the root of a tree, rancid urine as medicine. This is, maybe you've been to an ordination before and you've seen them, the preceptor will go lines in the Pali, and then he or she will say the lines in the English. And one of these things is the be happy with such and such. You can get this in this way. So it's like in ancient times, and in the ancient Buddha days, you don't know if you were going to be with that new monk or whatever. So it was kind of like, these are the main rules not to break, and these are the main, your main kind of basic requisites. And then if you go somewhere, you go with another monk or whatever, you kind of at least know the basics, right? To survive and to not to break the major rules that make you not a monk anymore. And so this is what they say: rag robes, a lump of alms food, lodgings under the root of a tree, and rancid urine as medicine. These four trifles are easy to find and are blameless. When a mendicant is content with trifles that are easy to find, they have one of the factors of the ascetic life, I say. The Buddha spoke this matter. On this it was said, when one is content with what's blameless, trifling and easy to find, they don't get upset about lodgings, robes, food, and drink, and they're not obstructed anywhere. This is this is kind of I don't know if the right word is to call it. I'm trying to think of the word. The words coming to my mind is probably, I think, has a sexual connotation, like a double entendre. It's like meaning two different things, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Because in places, the Buddha says, actually, one is content with any kind of rag robe, with any kind of, medicine, with any kind. And so this is also like if people give you kind of, more highfalutin, more fancier robes. This is instead of, uh, obviously you don't get attached to, I want the fancier robe. It feels nicer on my skin. But you don't really, you're not supposed to get attached to, I'm an ascetic monk. I don't have these kind of robes and things like that. That was a path of my own that I went through. My first robe was, I had to make all kinds of patches and it's falling apart, and I was getting, yes, I have a rag robe like the bhikkhus of old. And then I had to realize, actually I was attaching to having the rattier robe when people, the Sri Lankan community at Katina wanted me to have a robe. And so I was like, okay, well, you know what? No, that's unskillful. The skillful thing is I'll let them give me. That's what they want to do. They want to offer it. I'm okay. All right. So there's you can go either way in here. It's not just, so when you're basically, it's like when you're okay with the minimum amount, somebody gives you something more, you're not going to get attached to it. It's like, I survive on this. This will be no problem. If I have this, as long as I have it, okay. When I don't have it, I go back to rancid urine or whatever. Okay, I'm all good. No problems. Right? And so it's being able to use what is offered without attachment, whether it's minor, whether it's, these kind of very trifling, as the word is here put, requisites, or fancy requisites. So it's an interesting thing there. There's a sutta where the Buddha says, I wear pumpkin robes or something like that. Like apparently these like really, really fancy, soft, nice feeling robes. My disciples wear rag robes, wear hemp robes, things like that. The idea was that we're not attached. People want to give, and then you see this, especially with very famous senior monastics. Like people will come and bring gifts, but they don't bring it. They don't give them any gifts to the other monks. They give it to the senior monastic because he's the famous one. They want to give it to them. What most people don't know is that most senior monastics get all this stuff. Well, it gets distributed to the other monastics anyway, because the senior monastic doesn't need all these things. But this is the inclination of the people. They want to give the best to the senior monk. All right. They don't get upset by lodgings, robes, food, and drink, and they're not obstructed anywhere. These qualities are said to be integral to the ascetic life. They're mastered by a mendicant content and diligent. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. This is what I heard. All right. Visakha. Let's see. I'm sure the Buddha is right about restraining the senses such that it will lead to happiness. Problem is the distress one experiences while doing the restraining. Yeah, certainly. Although the more you do it, the more you realize there's really nothing substantial there. It's a mental pressure. It's not really. You can actually resist. The more you do it, the more you realize you can resist it, and the more you resist it, the more you see it, the more you understand it, the less power it has. So yeah, it arises, and you're like, yeah, I feel it. There's a little bit of the pressure there, a little bit of the pull towards it, but I know the downsides to it. I know the escape. I'm not going to get attached. I'm going to let it go. I think we'll read the one last sutta, then we'll do any last questions, and then we'll call it a night. The ending of the defilements. This was said by the Buddha, the perfected one. That is what I heard. Mendicants, I say that the ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and see. For one who knows and sees what? The ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. Oh, that's interesting. Its cessation and the path. I'm so used to the path leading to the cessation, but it just ends at the path. The ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees this. So, knows and sees the Four Noble Truths. That is the ending of defilements. The Buddha spoke in this matter. On this it is said, as the trainee trains, following the straight road, uju, straight like as in ethical, moral. You're like, that person's straight. We don't see that much today, but in common English parlance, we still have that person's crooked cop, right? Crooked criminal, crooked. It's like they're not straight. They're not honest, sincere, ethical, etc. As a trainee trains following the straight road, first they know about the ending. Enlightenment follows in the same lifetime. Then, to one freed through enlightenment, the knowledge of ending arises. The supreme knowledge of freedom with the ending of the fetters. This is not for the lazy. The fools don't understand. Extinguishment is realized with release from all ties. I quite like that. It even rhymes. Extinguishment is realized with release from all ties. This too is a matter that was spoken by the Blessed One. That is what I heard. Karuna is a collector of lost souls, just like I was. Oh, thinking about the outcast and yeah. I always make sure to offer to a junior monk or one who looks neglected. I like offering the gift of not being forgotten. Very good. Yeah. Even still, any senior monastic worth their salt will make sure that their junior monastics are well taken care of. Most places have so much stuff that they can't use it anyway. Every monastery I've ever been to, every temple I've ever been to, has a Monk Gap or Old Navy or Choose Your Clothing store in the basement somewhere, just filled with stuff that's just sitting there. It's from the generosity of people. That's where I got this robe, the basement of Empty Cloud. Okay? And I got my winter monastic jacket from the basement of the monastery in Newbury, Australia. That's my monastic gear is from 2 continents and multiple United States. That's the way it goes. All right. Well, that's a good thing. It's always good to think about all the monks, for sure. It's not easy being a monk, especially in the early years. People can be struggling. Bante, is it normal to leave a retreat and feel on edge? Right? Mahasi gets me agitated. I mean, also early sittings and restricted meal times too. I don't think that's normal. um, yeah, I don't know. Like that's, I it's not necessarily abnormal to leave a retreat not all blissed out, but on edge. I don't know. That's interesting. If Mahasi gets you agitated, well, maybe it's not for you. That's part of the path, is trying all kinds of different practices and seeing what works for you and what doesn't. I mean, I basically tried. I can't say I tried it all, because there's just some things that I just never had any contact with. But I tried a lot of different practices, um, and I gave them their fair shot, and I kept what worked. But I don't know that it would. It's normal to feel on edge after leaving a retreat. And like all the retreats that I did, even if the retreat was not like, didn't give me like a profound insight, it was hard, I always left pretty chill. At least not on edge. Maybe close to equanimous, if not like pleasant, more equanimous. But yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. The early sittings and restricted meal times. That can be, maybe you were hangry. Although you're a pretty experienced meditator, this is not your first rodeo, I believe. Not far from it. So, if you do something and you keep experiencing the same thing, well, that's like let me investigate. Let me see this. Ah, yeah, Bhante Rahula. Um, yeah, I don't really follow Bhante Rahula's things either. It's just not my thing. Um, Obviously when I'm going to be staying there, so and I stayed there, so when I'm there, when he does retreats and things like that, I do what he does. But yeah, his methods that he learned are not what works for me, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. You can even still go there and still enjoy the place, and things like that. But maybe not on a retreat. Just go to stay for a couple days. For instance, like when I'm going to stay there in February and March, you come visit for a couple days. All right. Speaking of which, do you have plans to offer retreats anytime soon? Yes, I think I'm gonna try to offer retreats in February and March when I'm at Bhante Rahula's. I just can't conflict with any of Bhante Rahula's retreats. Um, but I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think February and March. And depending on where I am for Vasa and things like that. Um, I think I'm ready to do a dependent origination retreat too. And I think it's kind of like what I've noticed sharing the Dhamma now 8 years is I get really kind of in that learning phase, and then trying to share what I've learned and the teachings from the suttas with others helps me to kind of refine that, and it pushes me to refine that, because now I have to give multiple talks over a weekend, so now how do I do it, things like that. So I think one of the retreats is going to be dependent origination for sure. um, I don't think I offered a brand, maybe no, I did offer a brand new retreat last year. It was the sutta retreat, understanding the suttas. Cleo, do I have other travel plans this year? Pending changes, I'm pretty booked up until like Vasa. The way it looks right now is for the month of January, I'll be with the Indonesian family, but when I say Indonesian family, I love the group is literally called Indonesian Buddhist Family, right? And when I stayed there first time years ago, I was like, I really love this. Like I want like Maggasekha Buddhist family or something like that. I really kind of like that. Um, maybe it's the Italian thing in me where it's just like, yeah, we're a family. This is cool. It's a community that comes together. The Maggasekha family. So I'm going to be staying with the Indonesian Buddhist family for a month of January. Then February, March, I'm going to be with Bante Rahula. Then April, I'm going to be, or the plan is to be all month in Colorado. Then May, as of last discussion, I'm going to be at Empty Cloud for the month of May. I'm going to be covering the monastery where Bante and I are gone for May. June is going to be a mixed bag, maybe. It might be one of the times I go to Canada. It definitely will be California, because I'm going to Abhayagiri to stay again, and maybe to spend some time at Dhammacharini, Karuna Buddhist Vihara, spend some more time with the Bhikkhunis. So June is going to be California, maybe somewhere else. I was also invited to go to India. So I might end up going to India this year. I don't know. We'll see. People invite me to go places, but it may not happen, or it may happen years later. So we'll see. Yeah, so Vasa, I have no idea where I'm staying. After that, no idea. But pretty much up until June, I know exactly where I'm going and what I'm doing, which is something I quite like. The organizer and the orderly fanatic in me really likes, even though I'm living a nomad life, right? This is my part of my training. The part of me that likes to have everything organized and scheduled. Now, at any time, any one of these plans could just flutter away, and then I don't know where I am. I guess I'm back, back with family in Toms River or something in New Jersey. But so far, that's my plans for the year. Subject to anicca, subject to not dying or not getting cancer or not. I posted on the Discord that I have a divine messenger now, a new divine messenger. I'm old enough that I start colon cancer screening. So I did a colon cancer test just recently. That's a first. Right? And so I was like, oh, this is a divine messenger. They don't start testing people like that until they're my age. Unless there's, family, real family experience with it. Hello, Manel. Welcome. All right. Well, it's past 8, and I've reached the end of the chat. So I think this is a good time to end. Sorry for those of you who are just joining. Because I'm traveling tomorrow morning early, I'm going to end it tonight. Have a few things I need to do before I go to bed, things like that. So I'm a budding sprout of a monk to me. That would be good if I was like a junior monk. I'm like 3 years away from being a senior monk. I'm hoping I'm a little bit more than a sprout these days. Sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes I pretty much feel like a sprout. But all right, friends. Well, I think we're good for tonight. So, Suki Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which won't be tomorrow morning for morning monastery experience. For those of you who do the morning, because I'm going to be traveling. So I'll be um, Tuesday morning more MME, and then we'll do the regular schedule this weekend. Right? Have a good week.